January 18, 1966, 10:45 hours. Cu Chi District, 25 kilometers northwest of Saigon. Sergeant Stewart Green watched bulldozers clear jungle for construction of 25th Infantry Division's new base camp when Earth collapsed beneath D9 bulldozer, revealing rectangular opening descending into darkness. The bulldozer operator, who had been clearing vegetation for perimeter defenses, radioed that he'd discovered what appeared to be bunker entrance or cave system. Green approached opening, observing that it was man-made rather than natural formation. Walls were smoothly cut. Entrance was precisely rectangular, measuring approximately 1 meter by ½ meter, and wooden support beams prevented collapse, suggesting recent construction or maintenance. Green had a problem that was tactically absolute. His division was establishing major base camp on site chosen because aerial reconnaissance showed no enemy presence and because location provided good defensive terrain overlooking surrounding rice paddies. Engineers had surveyed site, cleared initial areas, begun construction of permanent facilities including bunkers, mess halls, headquarters buildings. Thousands of American soldiers would occupy this base, making it critical logistics hub for operations throughout region. But discovery of tunnel entrance suggested that enemy forces had been operating beneath this location possibly for years and might still be present underground, while Americans built facilities above them. The mathematics said vulnerability. American base camp construction assumed enemy was external threat approaching from jungle or villages requiring perimeter defenses facing outward. But tunnels beneath base meant enemy could emerge from below inside perimeter, making exterior defenses irrelevant. Additionally, if tunnels were extensive, and single entrance suggested they might be, enemy forces could observe American operations from underground positions, could attack supply dumps and command posts from unexpected directions, could escape after attacks by retreating underground where American forces couldn't follow effectively. Green made decision in approximately 10 seconds that would lead to discovery of Cu Chi Tunnel Complex, eventually mapped at over 250 kilometers of underground passages, making it one of most extensive tunnel systems ever constructed for military purposes. He would not simply collapse discovered entrance and continue construction. Instead, he would order immediate exploration to determine tunnel extent, would request specialized personnel for underground reconnaissance, would recommend thorough survey of entire base camp area to locate additional entrances. This decision meant acknowledging that American forces had chosen site occupied by enemy forces who had literally been living beneath their feet while aerial reconnaissance detected nothing. Think about that calculation. January 1966. American division establishing major base camp on location enemy forces had occupied underground for potentially years. American doctrine emphasized firepower superiority, air mobility, technological advantage. But tunnels negated these advantages. Couldn't call artillery or airstrikes on tunnels beneath your own base. Couldn't use helicopters for mobility underground. Couldn't employ electronic sensors detecting enemies who were 15 meters below ground behind layers of earth-absorbing signals. What Green didn't know as he stared into tunnel entrance was that Cu Chi Complex had been constructed over 20 years, beginning during French colonial war in 1940s and expanded continuously through early 1960s. That Viet Cong forces had been occupying tunnels beneath location chosen for American base since before Americans arrived in theater. That tunnels included not just fighting positions, but entire underground infrastructure, hospitals, kitchens, sleeping quarters, ammunition storage, command centers, even theaters for entertainment. That approximately 10,000 Viet Cong fighters and civilians lived permanently in Cu Chi tunnels by 1966, making it underground city rather than merely military installation. What Green didn't know was that within months, American forces would create specialized tunnel rats, soldiers who volunteered for exceptionally dangerous mission of crawling into tunnels to map them, destroy them, or engage enemy forces in claustrophobic underground combat where every advantage favored defenders. That tunnel rats would suffer disproportionate casualties from booby traps, cave-ins, enemy ambushes, and psychological trauma from operating in darkness where visibility rarely exceeded few meters and where retreating was often impossible in passages too narrow to turn around. What Green didn't know was that attempts to destroy Cu Chi tunnels would fail despite massive resource expenditure. That American forces would drop thousands of tons of bombs, would bulldoze hundreds of acres trying to collapse tunnels from surface, would pump tear gas and acetylene into tunnel entrances trying to kill or drive out occupants, would even divert rivers attempting to flood tunnels. That despite these efforts, tunnels would remain operational throughout war, demonstrating that some defensive systems are effectively immune to conventional military destruction when built with sufficient depth and redundancy. What Green didn't know was that Cu Chi tunnels would become symbol of asymmetric warfare, where technologically inferior force using low-tech defensive infrastructure could negate technologically superior opponents' advantages. That post-war analysis would cite tunnels as example of how determined defenders using terrain knowledge and unconventional tactics could sustain resistance against vastly more powerful attackers. That military forces worldwide would study Cu Chi as case study in defensive tunnel warfare, influencing how modern militaries approach urban and subterranean combat. What Green didn't know was that discovery would force American tactical reassessment, acknowledging that controlling surface didn't guarantee controlling territory when enemy operated below ground. That this realization would spread throughout American forces in Vietnam as tunnel discoveries occurred across multiple provinces, demonstrating that tunnel warfare was systematic Viet Cong strategy rather than isolated phenomenon. That American doctrine emphasizing mobility and firepower would prove inadequate for fighting enemy who could disappear underground where mobility was impossible and firepower was ineffective. What Green didn't know was that some American soldiers who entered Cu Chi tunnels would never emerge, killed by booby traps, collapsed tunnels, enemy fighters, or simply becoming lost in labyrinthine passages where darkness and disorientation made navigation nearly impossible. That tunnel warfare would create unique psychological trauma distinct from surface combat because fear of enclosed spaces, darkness, and being buried alive triggered primal anxieties that traditional combat training didn't address. What Green didn't know was that Vietnamese who built and occupied tunnels would suffer their own horrific casualties from American destruction attempts, from disease in unsanitary underground conditions, from malnutrition when American operations prevented surface food gathering, from cave-ins burying occupants alive. That estimated 10,000 plus Vietnamese died in Cu Chi tunnels during war, not from combat, but from secondary effects of living underground for years in conditions that were barely survivable. What Green didn't know was that after war Cu Chi tunnels would be preserved as tourist attraction, where visitors could crawl through sanitized, widened passages experiencing fraction of what tunnel warfare involved. That American veterans would visit tunnels decades later, confronting physical space where they had fought, trying to reconcile memories with peaceful tourist site. That Vietnamese guides would explain tunnel construction and occupation, creating cognitive dissonance for American visitors between admiring Vietnamese engineering and ingenuity versus acknowledging that tunnels enabled killing of American soldiers. The mathematics of underground warfare were being written in tunnel depth and passage length and ventilation shaft spacing that would prove that some defensive systems can absorb virtually unlimited offensive firepower when constructed with adequate protection and redundancy. And those mathematics would demonstrate that technological superiority doesn't guarantee victory when inferior opponent exploits terrain advantages that negate superior weapons' effectiveness. By time, Green organized initial tunnel exploration team, 5 soldiers with flashlights and pistols descending into darkness beneath site chosen for major base camp. Transformation from conventional warfare assumptions to acknowledgement that enemy operated in 3-dimensional battle space, including vertical dimension beneath American positions, had begun. And calculation that controlling surface was insufficient for territorial control when enemy could emerge from below at any time had been made through single bulldozers' discovery that earth beneath American feet was hollow. 1946 to 1964. 20 years before Green's discovery, Vietnamese resistance forces began constructing Cu Chi Tunnel Complex during struggle against French colonial rule, creating infrastructure that would eventually span 250+ kilometers of underground passages. Viet Minh operational planning document dated 1946, preserved at Vietnamese Military History Institute, outlined tunnel construction rationale. According to document, French forces possess superior weapons, artillery, aircraft, making conventional battle futile. Resistance requires infrastructure protected from French firepower, enabling fighters to survive bombardment and emerge to attack French positions when advantageous. Cu Chi District provides favorable terrain, red clay soil that maintains structural integrity, allowing tunnel construction, water table sufficiently deep, permitting tunnels at safe depth, dense jungle providing concealment for tunnel entrances. Recommends systematic tunnel construction throughout district, creating interconnected network, enabling movement, communication, storage beneath French-controlled surface. This initial construction was modest. Simple tunnels connecting fighting positions, allowing guerrillas to move between locations without surface exposure. According to construction records, initial phase 1946-1954 created approximately 30 kilometers of tunnels averaging 1 to 2 meters depth. Tunnels were simple passages connecting spider holes, concealed fighting positions from which single soldier could fire, then retreat underground. Construction was manual using simple tools: hose, baskets, wooden supports. Earth excavated from tunnels was dispersed across rice paddies, making detection from surface difficult. Tunnel dimensions were minimal, typically 0.8 meters wide by 1.2 meters high, requiring crawling or stooping, preventing use by larger French soldiers if discovered. French forces rarely encountered tunnels during Indochina War because tunnel locations were remote and French operations focused on population centers rather than rural areas. According to French operational reports, Viet Minh fighters demonstrate ability to appear and disappear rapidly, avoiding sustained engagement. Suspected use of hidden trails and underground shelters, but extent of tunnel systems unknown. Operations in Cu Chi District encounter resistance, then find area appears empty within minutes, suggesting pre-positioned escape routes. After Geneva Accords ended French colonial war in 1954, tunnel construction accelerated as Viet Cong anticipated renewed conflict. According to construction directive dated 1959, American-backed Saigon government threatens liberation struggle, expand Cu Chi tunnels, creating comprehensive underground infrastructure supporting sustained operations. Requirements: storage for weapons and ammunition, medical facilities for wounded, living quarters for fighters and civilians, kitchens producing food without visible smoke, command centers coordinating operations, connecting passages enabling movement throughout district without surface exposure. Target: triple existing tunnel length by 1961. This expansion phase, 1959-1964, added approximately 150 kilometers, bringing total to approximately 180 kilometers. Construction became more sophisticated with multiple levels, improved ventilation, and specialized chambers. According to technical specifications, 3-level construction, Level 1 at 3 to 4 meters depth for living quarters and light activity. Level 2 at 6 to 8 meters depth for critical facilities, including hospitals and command centers. Level 3 at 10 plus meters depth for emergency shelters surviving bombardment. Vertical shafts connecting levels designed with right-angle turns, preventing gas penetration and limiting blast effects. Ventilation shafts camouflaged at surface and equipped with one-way valves preventing reverse airflow. Tunnel walls reinforced with bamboo matting and in critical sections with wooden boards, passages dimensioned at 0.8 x 1.2 meters, preventing use by average American soldiers who were larger than Vietnamese. By 1964, 1 year before American combat troops arrived, Cu Chi Complex was a substantial underground city. According to Viet Cong records, Cu Chi tunnels accommodate approximately 10,000 people, including fighters, political cadres, medical staff, and civilians supporting operations. Facilities include 18 hospitals with surgical capability, 50-plus storage chambers holding ammunition and weapons, 30-plus kitchens with ventilation dispersing smoke through termite mounds to avoid detection, sleeping quarters for thousands, meeting halls for political education, even small theaters for entertainment, maintaining morale. Water supplied from underground streams accessed through wells, food produced in hidden gardens near tunnel entrances and stored underground. Infrastructure supports indefinite occupation, requiring minimal surface exposure. January 1966. Discovery of first Cu Chi tunnel entrance on January 18, 1966. Initiated systematic American investigation revealing extent of tunnel system and forcing tactical reassessment of base camp security. 25th Infantry Division engineering report dated January 20, 1966 documented initial findings. According to report, base camp site investigation following bulldozer discovery of tunnel entrance has revealed extensive underground complex. Initial exploration located 12 additional tunnel entrances within proposed base camp perimeter, interconnected passages suggesting systematic network rather than isolated bunkers, evidence of recent occupation including fresh food, ammunition, documents dated within previous week. Assessment: base camp site is located directly atop active enemy tunnel complex, potentially housing significant enemy force beneath our planned positions. This represents unprecedented tactical situation requiring immediate response. Division Commander Major General Frederick Wyand ordered comprehensive site survey before proceeding with construction. According to order dated January 21st, suspend base camp construction until tunnel extent is determined. Engineer Battalion will conduct systematic survey using ground-penetrating probes and tunnel exploration teams. Intelligence will analyze all materials recovered from tunnels. Operations will establish security perimeter, preventing enemy egress from discovered entrances while exploration proceeds. Objective: determine whether site remains viable for base camp or whether alternative location must be selected. Survey conducted over 3 weeks revealed staggering tunnel extent. According to survey report dated February 10th, systematic investigation has located 87 tunnel entrances within proposed base camp area. Exploration teams have mapped approximately 15 kilometers of interconnected passages with exploration incomplete due to collapsed sections and enemy-occupied areas where teams encountered resistance. Tunnel construction is sophisticated, including multiple depth levels, ventilation systems, reinforced chambers resisting collapse, defensive positions at key junctions equipped with firing positions engaging intruders. Population estimated at several hundred enemy fighters potentially occupying tunnels beneath and surrounding base camp location, with unknown additional tunnels beyond surveyed area. Division faced strategic decision: abandon site or establish base despite tunnel presence. According to Wyand's assessment, relocating base camp would require finding alternative site potentially with similar tunnel problems given Viet Cong tunnel construction throughout region. Additionally, abandoning site would represent propaganda victory for enemy, demonstrating that underground infrastructure can deny terrain to American forces. Recommendation: proceed with base camp construction while implementing aggressive tunnel denial operations, attempting to clear, collapse, or render unusable tunnel system beneath base camp area. This decision, occupying base camp above enemy tunnel system while attempting to destroy tunnels, created unusual situation where American and Viet Cong forces operated in same geographic location but on different vertical planes. According to tactical analysis, American forces control surface with base camp facilities, perimeter defenses, and freedom of movement above ground. Viet Cong forces control subsurface with tunnel network, enabling concealed movement, protected storage, and ability to attack American positions from below. This creates three-dimensional battle space where controlling surface doesn't guarantee territorial control and where enemy can strike from unexpected direction below that conventional defenses don't address. February to December 1966. American forces' tunnel exploration efforts led to creation of specialized tunnel rat teams, soldiers who volunteered for exceptionally dangerous mission of entering and mapping enemy tunnel systems. First organized tunnel rat unit formation occurred February 1966 when 25th Infantry Division established tunnel exploration teams. According to formation order, create volunteer teams for tunnel reconnaissance and clearance. Requirements: soldiers must be physically small enough to navigate 0.8-meter wide passages, must demonstrate psychological stability for work in confined dark spaces, must volunteer without coercion given mission's extraordinary danger. Equipment: pistol or knife for close combat in tunnels where rifles are impractical, flashlight, rope for marking explored passages, gas mask for protection against enemy gas attacks, or poor air quality, first aid kit. Mission: enter discovered tunnels, map layout, recover intelligence materials, destroy enemy supplies, engage enemy forces if encountered, mark tunnels for demolition. Volunteers came from all military occupational specialties with no specialized training initially available. According to Tunnel Rat veteran Sergeant Arnold Gutierrez interview conducted 1987, I volunteered because tunnel rats got extra respect and because sitting on base felt more dangerous than taking action. Training consisted of senior tunnel rat explaining what we'd encounter, then leading us into relatively safe tunnel section for familiarization. Training lasted maybe 2 hours, then we were operational. Reality was nobody knew how to fight in tunnels because American military had never done this before. We learned through experience, which meant some of us died learning. Tunnel combat conditions were unlike any other warfare. According to after-action reports, tunnel passages average 0.8 (1.2 meters in dimensions, requiring crawling or extreme stooping. Darkness is complete beyond flashlight beam, which extends only few meters before absorbed by tunnel walls. Air quality deteriorates with depth, making breathing difficult and causing disorientation. Temperature and humidity are oppressive, often exceeding 38 degrees 6, with 95% plus humidity, causing rapid exhaustion. Noise carries through tunnels, making surprise difficult and making it impossible to determine distance or direction of sounds. Retreat is slow and vulnerable, crawling backward through narrow passage, while enemy fires from ahead represents nightmare scenario with no effective response. Viet Cong tunnel defenses exploited American disadvantages, according to captured Viet Cong tactical manual. Tunnel defenses include booby traps at entrances and junctions using punji stakes, grenades with tripwires, venomous snakes or scorpions in hidden chambers, fighting positions at tunnel intersections, allowing defenders to fire at attackers silhouetted against flashlight beams, false passages leading to dead ends or cave-ins, underwater sections requiring breath-holding impossible for heavily equipped attackers, and ultimate defense of simply flooding or collapsing tunnels when American penetration becomes a serious threat. Casualty rates among tunnel rats were disproportionate to their numbers. According to medical records, tunnel rat casualties, January-December 1966, 33 killed in action from approximately 120 personnel who served as tunnel rats at any given time, representing 27% annual death rate. Causes: booby trap detonations, tunnel collapses, gunshot wounds in close combat, drowning in flooded sections, venomous snake or scorpion bites, asphyxiation from poor air quality or enemy gas attacks. Additionally, 78 wounded requiring evacuation. Psychological casualties not quantified, but tunnel rat veterans demonstrate high rates of claustrophobia, anxiety disorders, nightmares involving entrapment decades after service. Tunnel rats developed informal techniques that gradually improved survival rates. According to veteran testimony, we learned to probe ahead with bayonet feeling for tripwires before advancing. We learned to hold flashlight at arm's length rather than near our heads, so enemy shooting at light wouldn't hit our bodies. We learned to listen to intuition. If tunnel felt wrong, we backed out rather than pushing forward. We learned to work in pairs, with one exploring while one remained at entrance as safety line. We learned to mark passages with colored tape tracking explored versus unexplored areas. These techniques weren't official doctrine, just shared knowledge among tunnel rats that gradually reduced death rate from catastrophic to merely terrible. Intelligence recovered from tunnels provided valuable information about Viet Cong operations. According to intelligence summary dated October 1966, tunnel explorations have recovered documents detailing Viet Cong command structure, maps showing tunnel extent including sections not yet discovered by American forces, weapons caches including rifles and explosives, medical supplies indicating tunnel hospitals treating casualties, food storage revealing supply networks, and prisoners including Viet Cong fighters and civilian tunnel occupants. This intelligence has enabled targeted operations against Viet Cong infrastructure and has provided insights into how tunnels support sustained operations despite American surface control. 1967 to 1970. American forces employed escalating destruction methods attempting to render Cu Chi tunnels unusable despite occupants' extraordinary resistance and tunnels' structural resilience. Demolition operations began with conventional explosives. According to Engineer Battalion report dated March 1967, demolition teams placed charges at tunnel entrances and intersections, detonating explosives to collapse passages. Results: limited effectiveness. Tunnel construction with multiple reinforced levels means surface explosions collapse only shallow passages. Deeper tunnels remain intact. Additionally, Viet Cong repair teams reconstruct collapsed sections within days. Assessment: conventional demolition insufficient for permanent tunnel destruction. Chemical warfare followed demolition failures. According to Chemical Operations Report dated June 1967, acetylene and tear gas pumped into tunnel entrances to kill or drive out occupants. Acetylene creates explosive atmosphere that detonates, killing occupants or collapsing tunnels through overpressure. Tear gas forces occupants to surface, where they can be captured or killed. Results: mixed effectiveness. Gas disperses through ventilation shafts, preventing concentration sufficient for lethality. Occupants retreat to deeper levels where gas doesn't reach. Many entrances remain undiscovered, allowing occupants to egress from locations beyond American surveillance. Some success in forcing surface evacuation, allowing temporary tunnel clearance, but reoccupation occurs once gas disperses. Massive bombing attempted to collapse tunnels through sustained surface bombardment. According to Air Operations Summary covering 1968, B-52 arc-light strikes deliver 15-20 tons of bombs per mission on Cu Chi District, attempting to collapse tunnels through surface cratering and shock waves. Total tonnage delivered on Cu Chi District 1968, approximately 10,000 tons. Results: Surface devastation creating moonscape terrain with overlapping craters. Tunnel damage limited. Tunnels at 6 to 10 meter depth survive all but direct hits. Reinforced construction prevents collapse from nearby explosions. Viet Cong casualties from bombing are significant, but don't eliminate tunnel occupation. Assessment. Even strategic bombing cannot reliably destroy deep tunnel systems without precision targeting of every entrance and passage, which is impractical given tunnel extent. Rome plow operations attempted surface destruction of tunnel entrances, according to report dated January 1969. Rome plow, armored bulldozer with frontal blade, systematically clears vegetation and removes topsoil, exposing tunnel entrances for destruction. Operations in Cu Chi have cleared approximately 5,000 acres, revealing hundreds of tunnel entrances. Each discovered entrance is destroyed with explosives or collapsed with bulldozer. Results: significant tunnel entrance destruction, but system remains operational because Viet Cong construct new entrances in areas not yet cleared, and because deeper passages remain intact even when surface entrances are destroyed. Rome plow operations create large free fire zones, denying Viet Cong surface concealment, but underground infrastructure remains largely functional. River diversion attempted to flood tunnels. According to operation report dated August 1969, engineers divert local stream into major tunnel entrance, attempting to flood complex, rendering it uninhabitable. Water pumped continuously for 72 hours. Results: limited success. Tunnel drainage systems constructed during building phase channel water to sumps or allow drainage to lower levels, preventing flooding of entire complex. Some tunnel sections flood, forcing temporary evacuation, but Viet Cong dam flooded areas, isolating them from functional passages. Assessment: tunnels designed with flooding resistance, preventing complete destruction through water infiltration. Despite massive resource expenditure, tunnels remained operational. According to 1970 assessment, 4 years of tunnel denial operations employing conventional demolition, chemical warfare, strategic bombing, mechanical clearance, and flooding have reduced but not eliminated Cu Chi tunnel complex functionality. Current assessment: approximately 40% of tunnels are destroyed or rendered unusable. Remaining 60% continue supporting Viet Cong operations, including command facilities, hospitals, storage, and living quarters. Viet Cong continue occupying tunnels and launching operations from underground positions. Conclusion: deep tunnel systems with proper engineering are effectively immune to conventional destruction methods available to American forces. Alternative strategy required. Vietnamese who lived in Cu Chi tunnels for years experienced conditions that were barely survivable, creating casualties from disease, malnutrition, and psychological trauma that equaled or exceeded combat deaths. Tunnel living conditions documented by Vietnamese veterans and civilians revealed extreme hardship. According to testimony by Vo Thi Mo, who lived in tunnels 1966-1970, life underground was hell. Tunnels were dark except for oil lamps that consumed oxygen, making air worse. Temperature was unbearable, over 40 degrees with humidity so high clothes never dried. We bathed maybe once per month using small amounts of water. Lice and skin diseases were universal. Food was inadequate, usually rice with salt, occasionally vegetables. Protein was rare. Many people developed malnutrition diseases. Disease spread rapidly in close quarters. Dysentery, malaria, tuberculosis. Medical care was limited to what tunnel doctors could provide with minimal supplies. Women gave birth in tunnels without proper facilities. Children grew up never seeing sunlight. Many people went mad from isolation and darkness. Tunnel hospitals treated wounded fighters and sick civilians with minimal resources. According to Dr. Vo Huang Lei, who served in tunnel hospital, We performed surgery by oil lamplight, including amputations, bullet removals, treating infected wounds. Anesthesia was limited. Often we operated with patient biting stick to manage pain. Sterilization was inadequate, leading to infections. Antibiotics were rare. Many patients died from infections that would be treatable with proper medicine. We improvised constantly, using sharpened bamboo for surgical instruments, boiling water for sterilization, using herbal remedies when proper medicine wasn't available. Death rate from wounds was high, not because of wound severity, but because of treatment limitations. Psychological effects from prolonged underground living created lasting trauma. According to testimony, living underground for years changes you. Some people became afraid of open spaces, agoraphobic after years in confined passages. Others became claustrophobic, ironically enough, developing fear of enclosed spaces after enduring them for so long. Many developed anxiety and depression from constant danger and isolation. Children who grew up in tunnels exhibited developmental problems from malnutrition and lack of normal socialization. Tunnel living selected for those who could psychologically endure it. Many others fled to surface despite dangers rather than continuing underground existence. Death from non-combat causes exceeded combat deaths. According to Vietnamese casualty records, estimated 10,000 plus Vietnamese died in Cu Chi tunnels, 1966-1975. Primary causes: disease, particularly dysentery and tuberculosis, malnutrition and starvation during periods when American operations prevented surface food gathering, tunnel collapses from American bombing, burying occupants alive, asphyxiation when ventilation was inadequate, and childbirth complications. Combat deaths, direct killing by American forces entering tunnels, represented only approximately 20% of total deaths. Majority died from secondary effects of living underground in conditions that were marginally survivable even without American pressure. Tunnel occupation required extraordinary commitment, according to testimony. People stayed in tunnels because surface life was impossible. American operations made surface habitation too dangerous. But tunnel life was slow death. You accepted that you might die from disease or starvation or bombing. You accepted that children might die from malnutrition or illness. You accepted all this because alternative was surrender or death from American operations. This wasn't heroic choice. It was choice between certain death above ground versus possible survival below ground. Most people would have preferred normal life, but that option didn't exist. Cu Chi tunnels preservation as tourist attraction created complicated legacy where site of intense suffering became commercialized historical destination. Vietnamese government decision to preserve tunnels as tourist site occurred 1970s. According to Ministry of Culture Directive, Cu Chi tunnels represent Vietnamese people's resilience and ingenuity in resisting American aggression. Site will be preserved as revolutionary heritage site and developed for tourism, demonstrating to international visitors how Vietnamese forces overcame technological disadvantage through determination and clever tactics. Portions of tunnel will be widened to accommodate tourist passage. Chambers will be preserved showing living conditions, hospitals, storage areas. Site will include museum, firing range where tourists can shoot AK-47s, and restaurant serving food representing tunnel diet. This commercialization created tensions between historical accuracy and tourist accessibility. According to Site Development Report, original tunnels averaging 0.8 x 1.2 meters are too small for most tourists, particularly Western visitors. Tunnels widened to 1.5 x 1.8 meters for tourist passages representing approximately double original dimensions. This eliminates authentic experience of extreme confinement that characterized actual tunnel living. Additionally, tourist route is short, approximately 50 meters, versus extensive networks fighters navigated. Electric lighting eliminates darkness that was defining feature of tunnel existence. Climate control reduces temperature and humidity, making conditions bearable versus oppressive heat that characterized occupation. Result: tourist experience provides sanitized approximation, missing most extreme aspects that defined tunnel warfare. American veterans visiting site reported complicated emotions. According to veteran testimonies, seeing tunnels as peaceful tourist attraction with Vietnamese guides explaining construction and Americans paying admission creates cognitive dissonance. I fought here. Friends died here. Now tourists smile taking photos at spots where combat occurred. It's surreal. On one hand, I respect Vietnamese engineering and determination. Tunnels were impressive achievement. On other hand, respecting enemies' capabilities while remembering they used those capabilities to kill American soldiers creates internal conflict. I can admire tunnels as engineering while hating what they represented. It's complicated. Vietnamese guides' narratives emphasize resistance heroism while minimizing suffering. According to guide script analysis, guides describe tunnel construction, explain how ventilation worked, demonstrate concealed entrances, emphasize how tunnels enabled Vietnamese victory over superior American technology. Narrative focuses on resistance heroism, brave fighters living underground defying American imperialism. What's minimized? Horrific casualties from disease and malnutrition, children dying underground, civilian suffering that had little to do with heroic resistance and everything to do with survival in conditions barely compatible with human life. Narrative serves nationalist historical memory rather than comprehensive historical accuracy. Preservation choices reflect Vietnamese priorities. According to analysis, Cu Chi tunnels are preserved, but many other tunnel complexes throughout Vietnam are not maintained. This selective preservation reflects political decisions about which sites serve national narrative. Cu Chi, being near Saigon, makes it accessible to tourists. Its extensive documentation by American forces makes its historical significance undeniable. But hundreds of smaller tunnel complexes that also played roles in war are abandoned and collapsing because they lack Cu Chi's combination of accessibility, scale, and historical documentation. Preservation is selective rather than comprehensive, serving tourism and political memory rather than complete historical record. Comparison between American and Viet Cong approaches to Cu Chi District revealed fundamentally different concepts of territorial control and fundamentally different resource allocation priorities. American approach emphasized surface control through firepower and mobility. According to tactical doctrine, territory is controlled by establishing bases with defensive perimeters, conducting mobile operations from bases using helicopter transport, applying firepower against enemy positions through artillery and airstrikes, and maintaining freedom of movement for friendly forces. Success is measured by American casualties minimized, enemy casualties maximized, enemy denied ability to mass forces or establish bases. American forces maintain initiative dictating when and where engagements occur. Viet Cong approach emphasized subsurface infrastructure, enabling sustained operations despite American surface control. According to captured documents, American forces can dominate surface through superior firepower, but cannot control territory they don't physically occupy continuously. Tunnels enable our forces to remain in territory that Americans claim to control. We emerge from tunnels to attack American positions, then retreat underground where their firepower cannot reach us. Tunnels provide storage for weapons and supplies, allowing us to sustain operations without vulnerable surface facilities. Tunnels provide protection for wounded and civilians, allowing population to remain in area, supporting our operations. Strategy: accept that Americans control surface during day, but maintain subsurface infrastructure, enabling us to control same territory during night and to strike American positions at times and locations of our choosing. Resource allocation differences demonstrated contrasting priorities. According to analysis, American forces devoted resources to establishing large bases with extensive facilities, including mess halls, recreation facilities, administrative buildings, operating helicopters requiring fuel, maintenance, trained pilots, firing artillery, and airstrikes requiring enormous ammunition expenditure, and supporting soldiers with food, equipment, medical care meeting Western standards. Viet Cong devoted resources to digging tunnels using manual labor rather than machinery, stockpiling weapons and ammunition in underground storage, maintaining minimal living standards, accepting conditions that Americans would consider uninhabitable, treating wounded with limited medicine, accepting death rates that Americans would consider catastrophic. American approach was capital-intensive, requiring technological and material superiority. Viet Cong approach was labor-intensive, accepting human suffering that Americans would not tolerate. Casualty tolerance demonstrated different strategic calculations. According to casualty analysis, American forces accepted approximately 58,000 deaths over entire Vietnam War, loss rate that American public eventually found unacceptable, leading to war's end. Viet Cong North Vietnamese forces accepted approximately 1 to 100,000 deaths, loss rate nearly 20 times higher. This differential reflected different political systems where American democracy made casualties politically costly, while Vietnamese communist system tolerated losses, different strategic positions where Americans were expeditionary force that could withdraw while Vietnamese were defending homeland, making losses acceptable cost of independence, and different cultural factors regarding acceptable sacrifice for political objectives. Technological advantages proved insufficient for victory. According to post-war assessment, American forces possessed overwhelming technological superiority: air power, artillery, helicopters, electronic sensors, night vision equipment, advanced communications. Yet this superiority proved insufficient to defeat enemy using low-technology defensive infrastructure that negated technological advantages. Tunnels were immune to air power, couldn't be detected by electronic sensors, required ground forces to clear, which negated American preference for firepower over manpower. Lesson: technological superiority doesn't guarantee victory when opponent employs tactics that exploit vulnerabilities in technology-dependent approach. Cu Chi Tunnel's role in Vietnam War revealed fundamental truths about asymmetric warfare, about limitations of technological superiority, about how defensive infrastructure can enable inferior force to sustain operations against superior opponent, and about costs both sides endure in protracted conflicts. First truth: defensive infrastructure providing protection from superior firepower enables inferior force to sustain operations that would otherwise be impossible when infrastructure is constructed with adequate depth and redundancy. Cu Chi tunnels provided protection from American artillery, bombing, and ground operations, allowing Viet Cong to maintain presence in area where surface operations would have been suicidal. Tunnels at 6 to 10 meters depth survived all but direct bombing hits. Multiple entrances meant destroying some, didn't eliminate system. Ventilation and drainage prevented gas and flooding from rendering tunnels uninhabitable. This infrastructure allowed approximately 10,000 people to live beneath American base camp, demonstrating that properly engineered defensive systems can enable sustained resistance despite attackers' overwhelming firepower superiority. Modern militaries facing opponents who employ tunnel warfare, as Israel faces in Gaza, as occurred in Afghanistan caves, demonstrate Cu Chi's lesson that underground infrastructure neutralizes conventional military advantages, requiring different tactical approaches, emphasizing infantry operations, specialized equipment, and acceptance that destruction may be impossible, requiring containment instead. Second truth: Technological superiority proves insufficient when opponent employs tactics exploiting technology's limitations, and when opponent's tactical approach doesn't depend on technology matching attackers' capabilities. American forces possessed helicopters, B-52 bombers, artillery, sensors, communications, technological capabilities exceeding Viet Cong by orders of magnitude. Yet this superiority couldn't prevent Viet Cong from operating from tunnels because tunnels exploited technological limitations. Air power couldn't destroy deep underground structures without direct hits, requiring more bombs than could practically be delivered. Sensors couldn't detect underground movements. Helicopters couldn't operate underground. Artillery couldn't target what couldn't be located. Meanwhile, Viet Cong tactics required minimal technology. Tunnels were dug with hand tools, weapons were small arms, and explosives not requiring sophisticated technology. Operations were coordinated through runners rather than electronic communications. This technological asymmetry meant American advantages were irrelevant in tunnel warfare, while Viet Cong capabilities were sufficient for their approach. Lesson applies broadly. Technological superiority matters only when conflict occurs in domains where technology provides advantages. When inferior opponent shifts conflict to domains where technology is irrelevant, superiority becomes meaningless. Third truth: territorial control without vertical control, controlling what's beneath surface, is incomplete when opponent operates underground, enabling them to strike from beneath controlled territory. American forces established Cu Chi Base Camp, controlling surface with perimeter defenses, facing outward, assuming enemy was external threat. Discovery that enemy occupied tunnels beneath base demonstrated that surface control didn't equal territorial control. Viet Cong could emerge from below inside American perimeter, attacking supply dumps, command posts, or troop quarters from unexpected directions, then retreating underground. This required American forces to defend against threats from below, direction that conventional defenses don't address. Modern urban warfare faces similar challenges. Hamas tunnels beneath Gaza, Hezbollah tunnels beneath southern Lebanon, ISIS tunnels beneath Mosul demonstrate that controlling surface doesn't guarantee security when opponent operates from beneath. Effective territorial control requires controlling not just surface but subsurface, requiring capabilities like tunnel detection, underground mapping, and counter-tunnel operations that most militaries have underdeveloped because conventional warfare doctrine assumes two-dimensional rather than three-dimensional battle space. Fourth truth: casualty tolerance differences between democratic expeditionary forces and authoritarian defenders of homeland create asymmetry where defender can sustain losses that attacker finds unacceptable, enabling defender to win through attrition despite losing more casualties in absolute terms. American forces lost approximately 58,000 killed, losses that American public found unacceptable, forcing withdrawal. North Vietnamese forces lost approximately 100,000 killed, nearly 20 times American losses, yet continued fighting until victory. This differential reflected that American forces were expeditionary troops defending no vital interests, making casualties politically costly in democracy, while Vietnamese forces were defending homeland against foreign occupation, making losses acceptable regardless of magnitude. Additionally, Vietnamese communist system prevented public dissent, making casualty tolerance a government decision rather than public referendum, while American democracy made casualties subject to public opinion that eventually opposed war. This asymmetry meant that Vietnamese could win through attrition by sustaining resistance until American casualties reached domestically unacceptable levels, strategy that succeeded despite Vietnamese suffering vastly higher losses. Modern counterinsurgency doctrine recognizes this dynamic, Expeditionary democracies fighting in distant conflicts cannot sustain casualties that local defenders accept because political costs differ fundamentally based on whether forces defend vital interests or fight discretionary wars. Fifth truth: suffering endured by both sides in protracted conflicts often exceeds suffering that rapid victory or negotiated settlement would produce, but both sides continue fighting because neither sees acceptable alternative to continued resistance. Cu Chi tunnel occupants endured hellish conditions, disease, malnutrition, darkness, constant danger, for years rather than surrendering because they viewed American victory as unacceptable. American soldiers continued fighting in Vietnam, sustaining casualties, enduring combat trauma, knowing public support was declining because withdrawal without victory appeared unacceptable to political leadership until 1973. Both sides' suffering might have been prevented by negotiated settlement in 1966 or 1967, but neither side would accept terms the other offered, making continued war appear preferable to available alternatives. Only after years of additional suffering did both sides accept settlement that could have been reached earlier, demonstrating that wars often continue not because military victory is achievable, but because political leaders cannot accept available alternatives until suffering becomes overwhelming. This pattern recurs. Conflicts continue for years with both sides suffering because neither can accept terms that would end fighting until exhaustion or external pressure forces settlement that could have been reached earlier if political leaders had accepted reality rather than pursuing military solutions that weren't achievable. Sergeant Stewart Green's discovery of single tunnel entrance, January 18, 1966, initiated American confrontation with defensive system that negated conventional military advantages, demonstrating that sometimes low technology infrastructure defeats high technology forces when infrastructure exploits technology's limitations. His decision to explore rather than collapse and ignore forced American acknowledgement that enemy-occupied territory Americans claimed to control, creating cognitive dissonance between belief that base camp was secure versus reality that thousands of enemy fighters lived beneath American positions. Cu Chi tunnels, 250 plus kilometers of passages housing 10,000 plus people beneath American base camp, proved that determined defenders using terrain knowledge and unconventional tactics can sustain resistance against vastly superior attackers when defenders build infrastructure that superior firepower cannot effectively destroy. The mathematics proving defensive tunnels negate offensive firepower were written through 4 years of American destruction attempts that failed to eliminate tunnels despite massive resource expenditure, demonstrating that some defensive systems are effectively immune to conventional attack, requiring either specialized capabilities that attacking forces lack or acceptance that destruction is impossible, requiring containment instead. Post-war preservation of tunnels as tourist attraction created complicated legacy where site of intense suffering became commercialized destination with sanitized experience missing extreme conditions that defined actual tunnel living. American veterans visiting peaceful tourist site where they had fought experienced cognitive dissonance between respecting Vietnamese engineering while remembering tunnels enabled killing American soldiers. Vietnamese guides' narratives emphasizing heroic resistance while minimizing suffering served nationalist historical memory rather than comprehensive accuracy, acknowledging that tunnel occupation killed thousands through disease and starvation beyond combat deaths. The tunnels remain beneath Cu Chi district today, some sections preserved for tourists, other sections collapsed or sealed, others still unexplored. Physical evidence of warfare's three-dimensional nature and of infrastructure's role in enabling weaker forces to resist stronger opponents through defensive systems that attacker cannot effectively destroy regardless of technological advantages or resource expenditure employed against them.